I bet we have that one game that we missed when we were younger. That one game we wish we could go back to. That one game we wish we could have beaten. But might be a little afraid to be disappointed if it didn't hold up to our expectations. That's exactly how I felt a couple months ago when I was thinking of one of my favorite PlayStation mascots. One of the best. They had everything going for them. Y'all should already know who I'm talking about. I'm talking about my boy Astro. I'm just kidding. Of course I'm talking about Jak and Daxter. During the time, I was lucky enough for the collection to be on the PS Store and on sale, so I knew I had to cop it right away. Because, and I'm not afraid to admit this, but I never played the others, nor did I finish the first one. I didn't really get that far either. But, besides the point, seeing the games made me think, what happened to the franchise? I wondered why there hasn't been any new Jak and Daxter content in recent years. So not only will we uncover why that is the case, but I also will be talking about my experience as a young kid when I played the first one, and as a new player when I was able to play Jak 1, 2, and 3 in the collection for those who want to know what I thought about them, or even those who want to get into the franchise. Now, in regards to indie content, as of June 18th of this year, all the games in the franchise are in the PS Plus collection if you subscribe to the premium tier. But it also gives you the option to buy them individually. I do believe it was $9.99 plus tax in the US. But now I'll keep everything short and to the point, so let's go back to the past. Back to 2013 at the IGDA in Toronto. Here we have Neil Druckmann, creative director and writer for Naughty Dog's The Last of Us, but was also a programmer for Jak 3 and Jak X. Here he shows the concept art of Jak 4 and the redesign of our boy Daxter. As he's sharing this with us, he also reveals the thoughts and ultimately the final decision of his team as to why Jak 4 was scrapped.
They put Bruce Straley, who was game director in Uncharted 2, and I on the second project. And our task was, and this is the first time we're showing this, to reboot this game, Jak and Daxter. And these are some of the concepts from that project. So we spent a long time kind of exploring the world of Jak and Daxter, and how would we reboot it? What would it mean to bring these characters back? What are some story ideas that we were getting excited by? Here's some more stuff. So number 2 is pretty cool, where you see them fishing. And as much as we like a lot of these concepts and kind of exploring this fantastical world, we found that the ideas we're passionate about were kind of getting away from what Jak and Daxter was, and we're questioning is like, are we doing this for a marketing reason and naming something Jak and Daxter when it's not really Jak and Daxter? Or are we really passionate about it? And the answer was like, we felt it was more for marketing. And we just, again, we felt like we weren't doing service to what the fans of this franchise really liked, even if the reinvented Daxter is pretty damn good looking. So we went to our boss and said, do we have to do this? And he said, no. I thought it would just be easier for you guys if you started with something, but if you want to do something else, come up with something else. So we're like, awesome. And we left the office, and Bruce and I looked at each other and we're like, okay, now what do we do?
Could we ever see Jak and Daxter come back? It's hard to say. You see, 1 year later, Naughty Dog had an interview with IGN in regards to bringing back Crash Bandicoot and Jak games. And as we know, that boy Crash got some love in recent years. And while Jak, well, he got nothing. But there is a specific part of the interview I want to point out. We never forget our past, and it'd be great for nostalgic reasons. It'd be the same reason as to why there isn't a Jak 4. I don't know if it's playing to our strengths right now. It comes back to our decision-making process, whether it feels right. With Jak at the time, we were really focused on making games grounded in a stylized but realistic world. And if you try to transfer Jak to that, you lose a lot of what made him special. So basically, Naughty Dog got really into making the Uncharted games and The Last of Us, and as we all know, they unfortunately took their eyes off Jak and Daxter, but hey, we all can hope that one day they'll revisit them and bring them back to us. Now that I kind of summarized why Jak and Daxter have made a return, I'd like to talk about my overall experience with the trilogy. And only the trilogy because Jak X plays differently, still haven't played Daxter but do hear great things about it, and apparently everyone in the fan base hates Lost Frontier. So I'm not even gonna touch that. Matter of fact, just forget that I even mentioned the name.
Sorry.
And I'll talk about them in the same way by talking about the basic summary of the story, lightly about the characters, the game mechanics, and the highlights and lowlights for me personally. So without further ado, Jak and Daxter, the Precursor Legacy. From the perspective of young me, I love the colorful world and the characters with their unique designs, especially our boys Jak and Daxter, because of the goggles. Something about characters with goggles made them look very cool in my eyes, and everything still holds true from younger me to the older me that finally beat it. Like the same way, I was still freaking scared of this damn fish! I apologize, I'm sorry y'all. I'm still a little bit traumatized about hearing that damn heartbeat, okay? I'm sorry. Let's just move on. I like the simple story of the game. Basically it goes, Jak and Daxter set sail to a dark island called Misty Island and encounter the main antagonist, Goal, and his evil sister Maya, who both of them want to take over the world with Dark Eco. While Jak and Daxter traverse the island, they engage with one of the Lurkers, which is one of the common enemies in the game, and later in the engagement it causes for Daxter to accidentally fall into a huge pool of Dark Eco and turns him into an Ottsel, which by the way is a mix between an otter and weasel, which is kinda cool. So ultimately we need to try to turn Daxter back to a human. So yeah, that's pretty much the story. It isn't too shabby, and the way you progress into it isn't too bad. Having to collect power cells to move on to another level by either buying them with precursor eggs at a precursor oracle, or you can buy them from other people, or by doing missions for other people as well. And whenever you collect one, Jak and Daxter do a celebration, and I really like celebrations. My favorite one is actually the alley-oop. It's the best one in my opinion. Oh, and by the way, the precursors, as I mentioned them before, they're actually the beings that created the universe. So that's a little bit of Jak and Daxter lore for y'all. My favorite mission was the fishing one, because something about catching the fish just kind of like scratched the satisfying part in my brain. And also, I hate one of these missions, because fuck this little mute. It was hard catching it as a kid, and my hate still carried on, but getting to replay it was a bit easier. It just took a little longer to catch it than I thought, I'll admit. Let me not forget to actually mention the nice platforming in the game. I found it enjoyable as hell, getting here and there on each level with the double jump, spin kicking to stay in the air longer, or hitting the smoothest Shoryuken you've ever seen. One of the highlights I want to point out too are the death screens when Daxter says some shit after you die. I just thought they were pretty funny and enjoyable.
Don't step into the light, Jak! Don't step into the light! Step 1, stay alive. Step 2, think about not doing something like that again! While you're down there, could you rub my feet?
I also enjoyed the game's power-ups, Eco, and for a little, Jak and Daxter lore, Eco is basically just the energy of life in the Jak and Daxter universe, just so y'all know. We got green for health, of course, blue for a little speed, collecting items a little farther away, and actually activating certain platforms, red for a strength buff, and my personal favorite, yellow, which is a long-range power-up. You just kind of throw fireballs at people. It might be some nostalgia giving me some influence, but overall, I found little faults to dislike the game, and definitely my favorite out of the three. And now we arrive at Jak 2, and a very obvious shift from the first one. Like, the completely different setting of the game, but it's just not the tone shift, not just the setting they changed. They made Jak talk.
Me, Daxter! That's a fine hello. I've been crawling around in this place, risking my tail, literally, to save you. I've been looking for you for 2 years! Say something! Just this once!
I'm gonna kill Praxis.
I didn't know he would actually talk, so that definitely shocked the mess out of me in a good way, of course, because I wasn't expecting him to actually have a voice now, and I actually kind of dig it. Pointing out the obvious things, let's move on and talk about the story. Following not too long after where the first game ended, Jak, Daxter, Samos, and Kira boot up an ancient piece of Precursor tech, and it accidentally sends them to an industrious city named Haven City, and everyone got split up. Jak gets confronted by the Crimson Guard, which is a militaristic police led by Baron Praxis, one of the antagonists, the other being the leader of the Metalheads. Oh, and did I forget to mention? Praxis also governs the city, and the one responsible for getting Jak captured. And not only that, actually had our boy injected with Dark Eco for 2 years. Eventually, Daxter comes to bust Jak out, and we discover Jak can actually transform into a dark mode, Dark Jak, showing an edgier side of him. So, Jak wants revenge, joins a rebellion called the Underground to help take down Praxis and apparently help this little kid become the rightful heir of Haven City. So it's a simple revenge and resistance story, and it was a pretty interesting route to take, especially compared to the first game. So I was a little skeptical, I'm not gonna lie, and uneasy on how this was going to go. But long story short, I warmed up to it eventually as I played it. We got to see our characters and how they adapted to the new world, and even how a lurker adapted. I personally like it, kind of like, you know, how he's all dressed and now fancy up. And of course, new characters to the story as well. And one of my favorites, besides Ashlyn Praxis, and also, she's also, of course, the daughter of Baron Praxis, is my guy, Sig. Now, this guy is a ride or die. I love him. Alrighty. Let's move on to the gameplay. The way to progress through the story is to simply go to the next waypoint. That's it. So, no precursor, eggs, power cells, none of that. So no need to worry if you don't have enough power cells. The platforming being the same, which I'm glad because I didn't see any faults with it. If it's not broke, don't fix it. And being in the city, you will need a way to traverse the large new map, so they introduced a variety of zoomers and a really cool hoverboard. Both were pretty fun in my opinion, except driving a zoomer in this area. Now, remember when I mentioned the different colored eco giving you certain effects? Well, they did switch it to something else, that something else being guns. I will say that I do miss the power-ups, but I did find joy in using these new weapons, and I think it's pretty cool. The color of the weapons kind of correspond with the eco from the first game, red being strong up close, blue being fast, and yellow being long range. At this point, I've been saying some pretty nice things about the mechanics, almost glazing even. Well, I do have to admit, something. Dark Jak didn't really have any purpose. Gameplay-wise, of course. Alright, so Dark Jak fans, please don't hate me. Let me explain. I like him in the story, but I personally feel like something was missing, or maybe not enough ever was put into him, because my weapons are really all I needed to clear missions without worrying about if I have my meter full to even unleash Dark Jak. Before I give my overall opinion on Jak 2, I would like to highlight some of my personal favorite missions. One of them being the race missions, purely because it was something I wasn't expecting, and for it to be fun. Even though the feel and the control of the vehicles were a little weird at first, but then got used to it. So yeah. And my other favorite, getting to control Daxter. It was surprising, and I thought it was a neat and fun idea to be able to use Daxter. Lowlights. The checkpoints. The checkpoints when you die. They send you all the way to the first game. Okay, now that's an over-exaggeration, of course, right? But they do send you really back in the mission that you were doing. That is one of the very high low lights for me right there. But I'll tell you something worse. They removed my Daxter death screens. I was very upset when I found this out, alright? But it's okay. It's okay. Alright, with Jak 2, story was pretty good. Characters were introduced and had good dialogue and chemistry. Gameplay was mostly good, Dark Jak and checkpoints being the reason I said mostly good instead of really good. So, all in all, I would say Jak 2 was honestly just good. It wasn't bad. Not the best, it was just good. And we finally made it to the sequel to the edgy, Jak 3. Taking place sometime after Jak and Daxter saved Haven City by taking down Praxis and the leader of the Metalheads, the city has new enemies emerging. Well, they're more like old enemies, as the remaining Metalheads that survived and the Crimson Guard deathbots created by loyal guards to Praxis whenever Ashlyn, his daughter, took over the Crimson Guard and reformed it into the Freedom League. And this hating ass prick, Count Vigor, wants to blame everything bad happening to Haven City on Jak because of him having dark eco in him. Like, what? So Jak, Daxter, and even Pecker from Jak 2, he's kind of cool by the way, you know, I rock with him, get banished into the wasteland and almost die. But get saved from Damus, the ruler over the wasteland city, Spargus. And now Jak and Daxter have to repay Damus by doing missions for him. The duo discovers a looming threat coming from space called the Dark Makers, which is a more evil version, corrupt version of the Precursors. The duo also get convinced to help out the city and help their friends even though they got done dirty. New game, new characters, but also returning characters, like the homie Sig. So, y'all remember when I talked about the new game mechanics in Jak 2? Well, they added something interesting. Being able to explore the wasteland with different buggies. Some unique traits, like one lets you jump really fucking high. There's only two downsides about it. One, it's the control of the vehicles. It can be a little difficult to steer without oversteering and possible spin out, but only at times. Second, there's so much sand. I'm not a big fan of sand. Moving on, they heavily improved the guns in Jak 3 with more gun mods. And I also slightly dogged on Dark Jak in Jak 2. So I was pretty satisfied when they changed the requirement to turn into him by letting you turn into him as long as you have some dark eco. But there was something else they added that had me geeked. A new form. Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce you to Light Jak. The design is so crisp, it just makes you start salivating. Oh god. Sorry. But it's not only the design that makes me feral. It's the new abilities they introduced to the new form. One of them being able to fucking heal yourself. I really need this ability from the start. Second, well, you get to slow down time. And finally, a slight flying ability that makes you look hard as fuck. Highlight time. Daxter death screens are back.
This is what happens when they drop my name from the title.
The gun mods are a whole lot better and more fun. The sick new form and returning Daxter mini missions were definitely my favorite. Especially the one where Daxter actually gets turned into Pac-Man. And the only lowlight really in just Jak 3 is just the sand. And I'm being real with that, it's just the sand. I quite enjoyed the game. Overall, a big improvement and a good successor to Jak 2 in all aspects. I truly had a blast with the trilogy and it really didn't disappoint at all, which really did bring a tear to my eye. Because I got to relive some of my childhood and live through a new experience. I can only hope, with the rest of the fans, that Naughty Dog reboots, remasters, or just does something with Jak and Daxter and bring back that beloved duo back. Because even as an Easter egg, Insomniac made them look so good in their game. If Naughty Dog just decides to stop making Jak games, then I trust Insomniac to do something with it. But for now, we can only wait on Naughty Dog. But whenever they're ready, and when they know they can honor the fan base, but most important, them. Thank you.
Oh yeah, life is good.